Hello, everybody. Yep, it is Wednesday. Time to grab your popcorn, something to drink. Join us for the Witches Movie Coven. Yes, brand new show, not even a month in. If you're new to us, let me tell you about it. My name is Patti Negri. You might know me from my Witching Hour podcast, but I live in Hollywood and we like movies. So we want to talk about movies and witches, of course, meaning witch movies. So I brought in the best of the best to help talk about witch movies with me. Let me go from the bottom up. Heather Greene. Heather Greene is the expert on movies. She wrote literally the book about witches and movies right there, Lights, Camera, Witchcraft. So she's kind of like our experts on all things witch and witch movies. And I can't even tell you how much she knows of things I have not seen yet. That's why I need this whole group. We have Jason Mankey right there, expert witch, beautiful, Northern California, also expert on movie, and he's the one with the good hair. And also we are welcoming again, we had her last week, ghost bait herself, Courtney Buckley. She lives in Salem and living in Salem, and she filled in last week for Heather when Heather was stuck in some storm somewhere in Florida. So we're glad you're back. We are glad you're okay. And thanks for joining us again. You were so much fun, Courtney. We just had to have you back. And you are in Salem. And since we are in Salem, and there's a new movie out called Hocus Pocus 2. So that's where we're going to talk about today. So Heather, why don't you just start out? Number one, you're alive. You made it back from Florida. Anything you want to talk about that?
Yes, I am. That was quite some experience, and my heart and thoughts go out to all the people in southwestern Florida and northeastern Florida that got hit really bad from Ian. So just to say that. It was quite a ride, and we lucked out. But I'm here and I'm so glad to be back talking about witch movies with you guys. And of course, Hocus Pocus too.
Yes, thank you. So I do believe all of us saw it. I stayed up really late last night. I actually subscribed for Disney Plus. I've always been very private about I'm the only person I know who didn't subscribe to it. Now I do, so I can fit into the club with everybody else. Thank you, Nancy. Hi, everybody. I'm glad you guys are jumping in because we want your thoughts. We want your opinions. Again, Hocus Pocus 2, it's out. We might give spoilers. I don't know. I guess we are. We want you guys to have seen this. But let's start out with the first one again. I know we talked about it last week or the week before. The original, I really was unaware that it was almost 30 years ago.
29 years.
Ugh. Yeah, I was watching it with my wife, and she's like, really? It's been that long? I'm like 97 years old. Like, we were taken aback by it.
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's disrespectful how old that movie is, because I was alive when it came out, and no, thank you. It's been 10 years max.
Alive? I was an adult. I know, but they all look the same. They all look the same. So that's what I'm going. That's the Hollywood thing. It's like 30 years later, look at Sarah Jessica Parker, look at Kathy Najimy, look at Bette. It's like
they look pretty good.
They look pretty great. Yes, they do. So they really did. Okay, Heather, you're the expert on this about sequels and how sequels goes. Did they follow the patterns of what sequels are supposed to do?
I don't really think there's a pattern of what sequels are supposed to do. It really depends on the purpose of the sequel. In this case, they were really riding on the popularity of the witches themselves, because the original movie was not well received initially. It did not do well in its initial run, and it grew a fan base, almost like a cult fan base over the years, because first of all, it's a Halloween movie, and really because of the three witches. If it wasn't for those three performances, specifically those actresses and those performances, as well as the characters and the writers that made them, that movie would be nothing. We would not be talking about it right now. So they tried to capture, they really wanted to appeal to the fan base. And you could see that throughout the film, that they're giving nods to the old movie, but also really appealing, knowing that the witches are what makes this movie. And if you look, the witches in the first movie don't appear 30 minutes into the old movie. They appear
Really?
much sooner in this movie, and they have much more screen time in this movie. And I just saw do some research. The old movie, they purposely took out a lot of the witches. So this movie really was trying to appeal to that fan base that has made this a success over 29 years. And that's the purpose of it. That was the purpose of this movie. And the question is, were they successful? I guess we'll see when the numbers come out. Or it's a personal choice.
It's a personal choice. Wow, I just saw a flip up there. Kara seen the new one 7 times already.
Wow.
Considering it's been out a minute and a half, that's pretty good. Congratulations, Kara. That is.
Kara's ensuring us a sequel to the second film by watching it so many times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
You probably
true.
know it by heart by now. So if I go, what was that part again? We'll jump to you. I just see my friend Matthew and Sean noticed they watched them both. A lot of people I do know wanted to brush up on the first one, including me, before I saw the second one, because it had been a while. I didn't realize it was 29 years, but it had been a while. So Heather, since you are an expert, I've enjoyed especially the beginning when they were children. Oh yeah, that was really nice. Actually, I like that too. The opening them up with the kids and the baby Bet and the baby Sarah. That was pretty cute. They were very cute. So why don't you, Heather, since this is your expertise, give us kind of the basic for anybody who hasn't seen it yet.
Well, so the first movie left us with the witches being, I can't remember exactly what they called it, but they were gone, and the candle was extinguished, and they were unsuccessful. So here we have, once again, as a nod to the other film, the accidental or maybe not so accidental lighting of the black flame candle. Once again, it brings them back. And so then throughout the film, as in the first, the witches go on their evil quest, and they must be stopped by some children or some younger people who have discovered that they are really the Sanderson sisters out to destroy Salem. So we have a similar plot, but there are notable differences, and we can get into that later. But that's the essential, and so it runs a similar narrative line as the first one, but the details are notably different, and especially the like I said, there's way more focus on what the witches are doing in this one than the first one. The first one's very concentrated on the children and their quest to destroy the evil witches. So it's a little bit difference of a balance. And again, like I said, that is chiefly because the witches are what made it the film's success, and the witches are the most fun to watch anyway.
Okay, I'm looking at. I agree. Hold on. I'm looking at. JoJo says, Thackeray Binks, the kitty cat. He was set free in the first one. He was still guarding the book. I loved it though, but I didn't think the same. That was Binks.
No, that wasn't Binks. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I just didn't think it was Binks either.
No,
I thought it was sort of like a ruse, right? Because you kept expecting the cat to be a bigger part of the movie, and the cat really wasn't. And as someone with the black cat who looks exactly like that, I desperately wanted the black cat to have a bigger role in the movie, though it didn't need to talk necessarily.
Yeah.
Well, there was a whole scene in there too where they went through the same thing, and they thought it was Thackeray. And Sarah Jessica Parker did her whole little thing with it. It was very cute. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a nice nod without doing a disservice to the plot of the last film by doing something like bringing him back.
Right.
Yeah, because Thackeray actually goes back to his sister at the end of the first movie. He gets released from the cat. The cat.
Though, in the post-credit scene, because it is a Disney movie, so like a Marvel movie, we're going to build a entire Hocus Pocus universe and have lots of post-credit scenes. They did hint that the cat might be something else too. The cat had a big role in the post-credit scenes.
That's true.
Really? I might have missed it. Yeah. Oh, now I have to go watch the end of it again. I usually stay with it, but it was like 3:30 in the morning. It's like, I made it to the end. All black cats look alike, right? No. So, okay. Also, this was the first one wasn't Disney, right?
It was.
It was Disney too? Okay.
Yep.
Because this one did seem to have more of a Disney ending to me, like even Bet almost turning good at the end. Was that kind of Disney-esque?
The first one, both of them have the Disney ending. The first one, you have these children vanquishing evil, and good overtaking, which is very much a Disney thing. This one, yes, you have the redemption of the witches, the sword of redemption. Yeah, I guess you could call it that. She does sort of turn. She gets rid of her evilness. She may still not be the nicest of people, but she gets rid of the evil aspect of herself by the end. I think we just gave away some spoilers, probably.
That's okay. We said we would. We said we're going to give away spoilers. So
Yeah.
now you got to go watch it. I liked what they did, kind of modernizing modern witchcraft, what it looks like with the girls, with the kids, with the crystals and the magic store, and what modern witchcraft sort of is, or especially to the youth thing. That was pretty fun.
I thought it was odd though that the girls like never said they were practicing witchcraft. You know, they were doing the salt, they were doing the angelica leaves. They called Maiden Mother Crone at one point, and yet they were always adamant that they really weren't witches and weren't practicing witchcraft, which I thought was an odd choice. I at least expected to hear the word Wicca or something at one point, and I didn't even get that. It was just that they were sort of witch adjacent, I guess.
See, I didn't even notice that they never said they were. I just kind of assumed that they were. I mean, at the end, they said, you're a witch on your 16th birthday. But you're right. I guess they never did.
It kind of gave the impression to me like they were, you know, it was like that coming of age thing where they're just figuring out what they're doing. And, you know, with the whole, her discovering that she has power, she is a witch. It's her, you know, when she's 16 or whatever, that's her stepping into that. And I don't know if I feel like they had to say that, or I needed them to say that. Just because like I think that was part of it for me, was watching that happen.
Yeah, I think that the choice of not using the words is key from my perspective when you're looking at witch films. But I think it was suggested a number of times, and they didn't fully deny it, but they didn't fully say it. But I think in this universe, witchcraft is the fantasy aspect of it, and what they were doing was more of a spiritual new age, metaphysical thing. So I think there was sort of, that's the way the movie couched it in order to enable it to sort of present witchcraft and deal with the original film, because in the original film, witchcraft was solely bad. There was no such thing as metaphysical good anything. So I think that's the way they sort of dealt with it in evolving it to today's time, is kind of, they could have used the word Wicca, like Jason said. That a lot of films have done that, Wicca versus witchcraft, and they didn't. But it, you know, it's a sign of the times what they did. They involved magic, good magic.
I think too, it's a good representation of what Salem actually is now. Where like the first film was heavy into, and obviously in the beginning of this film we saw too, but the first film was very heavy into what it was like in 1692 during the witch trials, like anything and everything. Obviously they were, you know, it was fictionalized and they were actually witches, but you know, that people were very quick to jump the gun and you know, accuse and execute. But today it's a melting pot of everyone, whether they practice Wicca or paganism, or, you know, we have the Satanic Temple, you know, any version of anything, like, you know, and just whether you don't practice a religion and you are a witch. And I feel like that, I guess that I'm used to that, seeing that from working there, that I don't think I picked up on that in the same way that maybe Jason did. Like it was very Salem-esque to me, like modern day Salem-esque.
So speaking of that, since you live in Salem and you were there and you do tours and stuff in Salem, did they shoot it there? How realistic was all of that?
Nope. The first one, there was a few scenes that were shot in the first one. The locations obviously still are there today and you can visit them. But the second one, they filmed in Rhode Island. So a lot of people were very disappointed to hear that, because they were planning trips to Salem, and they modeled a lot of things, like the Reverend's house in the beginning was modeled after the witch house, it was one of the judges' houses in during the witch trials. So it's it's the only building still standing within Salem city limits that has any direct ties to the witch trials. So the front of it looks very much the same, but they didn't film it there. They filmed everything. They built it all in Rhode Island.
Interesting.
Yeah. But like in the first movie.
Point,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Courtney. I just had a question for you. At one point, the girls, they run out of town into the woods and they go by this recreation of old Salem. I've been to Salem. Is that there? Is that a real thing?
No, what is real is the first movie in the very beginning where Thackeray Binks is looking for his sister, and he sees the smoke and he says, "Oh, they conjure," and that old timey village, that is Pioneer Village. That's really there. But everything, they didn't shoot anything in Salem for this one. Everything was done in Rhode Island or in Hollywood.
But there is an old town thing, Pioneer Village, in the real Salem, which I didn't know either of my times to Salem. I didn't know.
Yeah, if you watch the beginning, that whole village where like Thackeray Binks lived when he was actually alive and not the cat, that's still there today. You can go see it.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, good. Cat is getting a lot of comments. Somebody just watched it for the cat. Exactly. So the cat's the star of the star, no matter how big Bet is, no matter on all the stars. I love that.
I see a question, was that Sturbridge? It was not Sturbridge. No, it was Rhode Island. They built it for the movie. It's not anything that's really standing.
I thought one of the most interesting parts of the movie was there was like a big retcon in the movie versus the first one. And if you don't know what retcon means, it means that you kind of rewrite history for whatever reason. You see this a lot in superhero comic books. But in the first movie, the witches are all pretty bad, right? And then the second movie takes pains to make them sympathetic. The opening, when they're the young girl witches, or really before they became witches, I thought was most excellent. Like you had a lot of empathy for them, right? Like bad things were happening to them. You could kind of understand why maybe they went bad. The Reverend was really terrible. The townspeople were really terrible to these little teenage girls, making them do things. I thought that was really fascinating because it plays into sort of Heather talking about the fan service, because people love these characters. They don't want these characters to necessarily be evil and taking the souls of children. They want something that they can relate to in a more positive way. And I thought that they went out of their way in the film to make the witches more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I chime in there, and this is what I kind of sort of touched on an article that I wrote that was published today, is that they did that. I don't know if they would have done that if we were still in the Satanic Panic, and that's where we get to back in 1993. That movie, the original movie, was 100%, and we've talked about it here before. Just Satanic Panic material. It was witchcraft is evil, and witches eat children, and that was direct reflection of that period of time. And so they had to do what you were saying. They had to do the recreation, the retell. They had to spin the story so the witches and witchcraft itself was not a blanket evil thing, because it's not like that anymore. So they had to spin it. So what they essentially did was give the Little Witches a classic movie witch backstory, which is the story of what I term in my book the accused woman. It's the story of the oppressed woman, the story of the little girl. And it's a classic Salem-esque, Salem-based story, especially in the silent era. The little girl, the young teen girl who's forced to marry someone she doesn't want to, so she becomes the evil witch. That's a classic narrative that's used throughout Hollywood since the silent era. So they threw that in there, what I call a Sabrina type story, almost. The 16 years she becomes a witch, all this stuff. Now, although Jason, I have to say, is I don't know that Winifred was such a nice person even before she came out of witch. She is a little bit of a stinker before that, but then she becomes a witch and becomes evil. And they had to really work hard to reframe those three witches that everybody loved, and they did it. I think they did a pretty good job of doing that. It wasn't clunky, which is nice, you know.
You know what's funny is I'm sorry, Patty, go ahead.
Go.
Well, I was, I think, 6 when the first movie came out, so I was a child who got to experience that. I don't have any really like big memories of it. Like, it was not something that impacted me. I didn't really start to love it until I was older, and like into adulthood, where it became something that I watched every year. But my son, who is 12, has grown up with me watching it, so he is a huge fan and has been since he was born. And when we watched the second movie, he hated it. And he hated it for that reason, because he loves villains. And he did not like to see the redemption arc. He didn't like it at all. And he thought it ruined it for him. So he never wants to watch it again.
Really?
I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it made her almost even more, if I can say it, badass. Like, just see her fight back against the patriarchy when she was young in that time. But yeah, he, as a kid today, didn't like it.
I did have friends online who were complaining about, oh, I know that they're going to redeem the witches and they're all going to become good guys at the end. This was before the movie was out. But there was all this talk, and there were people who were angry about that idea. And I thought that they kind of balanced the redemption arc without being like totally reborn as goody two-shoes witches, right? I mean, they still had their, more downside to them, but they also cared about each other, which they made really apparent throughout the film, which I really liked.
Mm-hmm. And that's what wasn't clunky, was that it wasn't that they just made them good. It wasn't all of a sudden they were hopping along with baskets and handing out, I don't know, dollar bills to all the poor. I mean, this wasn't a goody two shoes thing, like you said. They actually, well, we won't say what happens to them. They were punished for their transgressions, but the redemption was it fit. It fit the characters without totally making them good. Because in the end, Winifred was not a very nice person before she was a witch. You weren't going to take that part of her away. So that's I think they did a really good job with not going too overboard with that arc.
Right. I agree. I really like the second one more than the first one, and I love the first one. But I like the second one. But Jason, you too, you didn't like the first one, right?
It's okay. I mean, it's just, I watched it as an adult. I didn't see it when I was younger. So I only watched it for the first time last Halloween because it always looked really silly to me. As much as I like some of the actresses involved, it just never really appealed to me. My wife's like, you need to watch this movie. And then it has a talking black cat, and that's hard to say no to. But I mean, it's a movie made for kids, and sometimes maybe you don't want to watch that as you get older. So I missed it the first time around. I don't hate it, as I think I said on the first show we talked about the movie. It's like an amusement park ride, right? It's big, it's silly, it's very Disney-esque. I can appreciate it for how colorful it is. I didn't dislike it as much as Heather dislikes it. That's for sure.
That's true.
I love that. I love that they put the music and the marching people under the spell. I loved all that. I'm a musical fan, but that got to sing. They get their musical numbers. We had the whole almost Michael Jackson thing. I loved every second of it.
Something that bothered me actually is that this movie feels like so polarizing if you look at comments online. And one of the comments that I kept seeing that just drives me insane is people are upset that they sang that One Way or Another song instead of I'll Put a Spell on You. Why would you want them to sing the same song? Like, they did a great job and it was something new and it's not the same movie over again. But like, I love the musical numbers. And in the beginning when he said, did they sing? Because they love to sing. There were so many funny moments in this movie. I laughed so much more than I did with the first one. And there's a piece that I'd love to talk about real quick that I caught on to that I don't know if anyone else will think is as funny as I do, because I do work in Salem, so I get asked about this a lot. But very seriously, in Salem, there's a location called Proctors Ledge, which is where the actual executions of the accused witches took place in 1692. So it's a very somber spot, and it's a place where people go. It's very heavy. People go to pay their respects. And it's, when you try to give people directions to it, it's behind a Walgreens. And that's how there's no other way. It's behind the Walgreens. So people will snort and laugh and, but really, like, we're talking about this serious thing, but it's behind the Walgreens. And when I was watching this movie and they said, oh, we're going to bring you to find the souls of children, and then Walgreens came up, I thought I was going to pass out. It was the funniest part. And I don't know if anyone else would get that other than someone who has had to give directions to Proctor's Ledge. But it was just, I don't know if that was on purpose. I don't know, but that single scene made the movie for me. I was a fan immediately.
I would guess it probably was on purpose. And I mean, it may have been just by chance of what they had to do when you film, but I would guess that it probably was on purpose.
Yeah.
If I was a betting person, I would say yes. I did not get that joke.
No, and it was so subtle, and I feel like you wouldn't get it unless you've had to give directions to Proctors Ledge, which is so serious, and it's not. There's no. I'm not trying to make light of that in any way, shape, or form, but the actual action of having to working in Salem and interacting with thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of tourists every year, and having to give those directions like 1,000 times a day, literally 1,000 times a day. It's behind the Walgreens. No, not that Walgreens. It's the one on the other side. But like everything around the Walgreens. And then I'm watching that movie and they're at the Walgreens. And I was like, you're joking. Like, this is the best thing. This is the best thing I've seen. And I loved it. That was it. I didn't care about anything else. Everything else could have been terrible. But because they did that, I was a fan instantly.
And then the mayor was angry later in the film, and he mentions the Walgreens again, and the lights of the Walgreens were out. Yeah. And he was so angry. It was in his rant about the apple, I think. And then the Walgreens, it was clever. I laughed a lot more too, not at that. I laughed out loud at the Alexa thing, the Alexa interaction with Alexa. That made me laugh out loud. I definitely, like Jason said, I was not a fan of the first movie. I wasn't a fan back then, and I'm a big Disney fan, and I don't mind kids movies at all. I watch anything. But it just was it was clunky to me, the first one. It really just didn't sit with me right. I couldn't figure out. I can't put my finger in all the details, but it just felt too clunky and too just forced, the first film. But its balance was different than this one. This one's balance was smooth. They really hit the stride because they relied so much on those witches, which is the strongest part of the movie, and the characters and the actresses that play them and the writing really hit its stride much better in this film. It was a much smoother movie. And it's a shame because the teen girls were good. They did a good job with their roles, but they sort of got overshadowed. They had a little craft thing going, a little Sabrina thing going, and all of the Charmed, whichever name your teen witch saga, they had that little thing going, but it really got overshadowed by the witches.
But see, that didn't bother me. I think that's okay. Teen girls being teen girls, as a rule, is going to be overshadowed by the world's most powerful witches that have been around for hundreds of years. That didn't bother me. If I had one thing that bothered me, but I don't know why it bothered me, was the witch of the forest in the beginning. And
I have to agree. I didn't love that.
But I don't know why.
It felt like, to me, it was like, instead of Winifred coming into her own power, she ended up running away from, this horrible thing into the woods, and someone gifted it to her. That's what it felt like to me. And I don't even know if maybe I just didn't get it, but like, that's what it felt like. And it should have been, she was so powerful, it should have been her coming into her own power, especially with the way that she stood up, to the Reverend and said, or the town really, and said she wasn't going to get married and all that. I didn't like it either. I think that's why I didn't like it, because it just didn't seem genuine to me.
It's Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso. Like, how can you not like that? Loved every second of it. She's amazing. She looks like a badass witch. My wife and I probably applauded on the couch. We loved it.
Well, it wasn't who the actress was who's playing it. It was just, where'd she come from? There was no... If she wasn't a character, there was no front story or backstory, or not who the actress was.
But maybe they hint at her still being around at the end of the film at the very end. So maybe, she's part of the Hocus Pocus extended universe now and will be there for Infinity Witch War. I don't know. Maybe,
Infinity Witch War.
Pre-sale tickets. Sign me up for pre-sale tickets to Infinity Witch War.
Okay, so we got a big yes from Jason, no from Patty and Courtney. Heather, did you have any thought effects?
Yeah, I liked her. I'm sorry, I'm getting an echo, so I'm having a hard time talking.
Me too.
I can't hear. I've got two of everybody.
I don't know where that came from because we didn't have one for a while.
No.
Ghosts in the Machine. The witches have taken over. Okay, I think it's fixed.
Now.
Maybe.
Is it fixed?
The heavenly producer is fixed. Yeah, that got really weird. And I'm like, maybe it's just mine. I'm just going to pretend I don't notice it. Could be Jason.
Oh, there it is. Back again.
Oh, now Jason's
live. This is why we like live, everybody. Live. This is. Is anybody? You guys, we're real time with all you guys. Are you hearing us twice? Everybody out there. Reply. I didn't notice.
Nope, they didn't notice.
Okay.
Okay, Jason's switching to headphones. So while he's doing that, I will I'll get back to the big question because I know you're all waiting so patiently to see if I like that first witch. I did. Oh, I had a different read. I had a totally different read than you guys, which is so interesting to hear how you guys felt she was just dropped in out of nowhere. Yeah, it's all better now. I don't hear myself twice. So basically, I read that as this witch of the woods, this natural, magical woman coming out and finding these young girls who are lost, who have just stood up to the patriarchy, has just ran away, and she comes out of the woods and finds them, and then gifts them with this path to magic. And so I saw this, and it's a very typical kind of thing, like a woman to girl, you know, all as the secrets of womanhood, the secrets of magic. And you're seeing this very much in a lot of films right now, is witchcraft being something passed between women, these secret things. And it sort of links back to the origins of a lot of witchcraft and magical practices. So that's how I read it. I was like, oh, here's this wise old woman, witch of the woods, who's now gifting these girls who have stood up to the patriarchy with the path to discover and birth their own power. And so they took the book. That's what the book was. So I saw that as a very powerful moment for those girls. So it wasn't like, oh, she's not powerful, you know. So that's how I read it. And then they go and don't gift necessarily the magic to the girls into the new teen trio in a nice way, but they sort of pass it on, okay, through a little bit of a war, through a contentious way, but they actually unwittingly do the same thing to these young girls who are now, as the film ends, walking in the same way, a new trio, a new coven. So that's how I read that. So, you know, I liked her.
There's a comment that we that got lost in the echo. But Stephanie V said, I wish they would have shown the forest witch teach the Sanderson sisters and not give them the book right away. And I understand time constraints for a movie, but I feel like I could have gotten what you got out of it, Heather, had I seen a little bit more of that. Like, I would have liked to see them sort of taken under her wing, or Tabitha said, like her being a mentor. And I think just a couple minutes on that would have made a big difference in how that was perceived.
Yeah, I agree, because it's like we saw 4 different movies or 4 different scenes, because my experience wasn't the same as what Courtney was seeing. Mine was she came and she went. Again, no connection to it. And I agree, the same thing. Had there been some mentor, had there been something, just she's here and she was gone. Who I missed, that's too fast for slow brains like mine sometimes. So I love that, though, that we had 4 different scenes.
Well, I mean, they do show her kind of at the end again, right? Like she transforms. I can't remember what the bird she transforms into was, but you kind of see her at the end. So maybe she was watching from afar the whole way through, and maybe she was giving them hints when they were younger, because the idea of 3 teenage girls like surviving in the woods until adulthood with no tools, no shelter, no water, no food, it's pretty amazing to me. I feel like somebody had to have helped them along the way. So maybe it was just a quiet helping.
Can I just tell you, though, that like I rewatched the movie tonight before coming on here, and I have no idea what you're talking about. I missed the bird entirely. Like, I have no idea about the bird.
No,
it flies at the beginning and then it flies at the end again.
Yeah.
No idea. I was awake this time, but no idea.
I Go ahead.
Yep, sorry. No, I was going to say is like without extrapolating anything into it, I saw it. I didn't. I can see what you're saying. I think if they had somehow hinted that she would teach them, it might have suggested it more. I just inferred that from. I didn't infer that she was teaching. I inferred that she was opening the door, saying, "Here you go," and they walk through it. So that's sort of what I saw in it. But yeah, I could see that. Not everybody would necessarily infer that piece, but it is it is a narrative, a typical narrative thing that we're seeing more and more now in witch films, where a older female figure, younger one. So maybe I've watched a lot of witch movies.
No.
No.
Maybe. Well, no, I still love it because even I'm reading. Thank you guys for your comments, everybody. It still looks like everybody
Witch.
watched kind of a different scene because it's it's the goddess Hecate. Is it the bird? What bird? So that's still odd to me that it's also different.
She's named Mother Witch. That's her character name.
Yeah. And to me, I just feel like coming off like the way I watched the scene that I watched, guys, that the coming off of that scene where they were chased out of town and Winifred was standing up to everybody. I loved that so much. Just I maybe coming from Salem, like seeing that and cheering her on through that. And then it was just like it felt so random to me. And it didn't, like Patti said, I didn't feel connected to it at all. And I feel like even like Heather, like you suggested, if there had been some kind of like illusion that she was going to mentor them, like anything like that, like just like even 30 seconds more of their relationship and who she was, like I just didn't get it. I didn't think it was necessary. I would have like gone with suspended belief and believe that they had gone into the woods and just learned how to be witches at that point without even having seen her.
I just want to add one other thing to this conversation, which is really important, that brings us back to the old film. In the old film, the girlfriend, the friend, Allison, she reads on a plaque that the book was given to the Sanderson sisters by the devil himself. That's what this written plaque says in the museum of the Sanderson sisters' house. We see in this scene, it actually is not. It's the Mother Witch. And I think, getting back to what Jason said of the rewriting of history, of the story, that's one piece that is very much rewritten. Now, the question is, though, is it really rewritten? Because Allison was reading a plaque written by presumably the person who owned the museum, who knew nothing about the Sanderson sisters and just assumed it was Satan that gave the witch the book because that's what Satan does. And they wrote the plaque. But in actuality, when we see the backstory, it's actually Mother Witch. Another witch, a nature witch, a mother witch, a figure from the woods, in the woods, a crow witch, Hecate, whatever you want to say, gives the actual magic book to Winifred. So I think that changes again and adds depth to what witchcraft is and what witches are and who they are by changing that story or telling the real story. So I think that's an interesting piece that story and that Mother Witch played.
Yeah, I like that actually. I didn't remember the devil itself, even though I just watched it. Matthew just said, he said it's interesting as a witch. The beginning had him feeling connected to both the Sanderson sisters and the new group of girls, even though they were kind of against each other.
Yep.
So
That's true.
I think too with that plaque, that feels very Salem-esque. Even going back to like the history of the witch trials, like they thought the devil was there doing everything, and so much so that they accused one of the accused that was executed. They accused him of being the devil himself. And when he did what he needed to do to prove his innocence, they said, oh, you know what? That's the problem because he is the actual devil and, he's given himself the power to trick us. So he actually still, that's not prove his innocence, whatever. So that feels very Salem-esque to me that they would have just said, well, this is the story. This is where they got it from. And not, and changed it up a little bit. So I think that's a very interesting point to make. And I think it's, for someone who spends time in Salem and lives in the history, that feels very on brand.
Mm-hmm. And on brand for the Satanic Panic as well, when the movie was made.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
And speaking of Satan, can we just talk real quick about the callback scene? When they looked in the window and someone was watching the movie.
Yes, that was awesome.
And then they were dressed up on the park bench. I don't know if you guys caught that, but I think it was when the mayor was trying to get his caramel apple, and he was like frantically running around. And then right after that scene where she looked through the window and saw them watching the movie. There was a couple sitting on the park bench dressed as like Satan and the wife with the curlers in her hair. It was
perfect.
This movie I loved. It was so funny.
I think I need to watch it again.
That was a nod to the old movie where they walk into where they knock on the house and was it Gary Marshall and Penny Marshall were in the house and they look at him and go, "Master, I can't believe you're here." And there's the whole gag of them thinking he's really Satan. And they showed the little clip. They showed a tiny clip of it just passing by a house, I think is right. It was were they walking past the house where they saw the movie playing? I don't
know what house. It was Winifred. She looked in the window.
Yeah, window. Yeah.
And then my favorite part of the whole thing is that she was like, "Ugh." She was so mad about it.
I remember that time because she remembers that time when, presumably, anyway. So it was good. They had little gags to the old film, which was fun.
I thought it was very, very entertaining. It was really funny, and I think they did the fan service really, really well without making the whole movie just fan. Like the movie can stand by itself, but it was also, they did a great job with the fan service.
I thought it would be a little slapdash, because it just came out to Disney Plus. They skipped theaters. I think they left a whole lot of money on the table by skipping theaters. So I didn't have a lot of expectations. I thought it might look sort of like a made-for-TV movie sort of thing instead of a bigger Hollywood production. Oftentimes they don't spend as much time on the script in such situations. And I thought the script, as Courtney has said, as everyone has said, was really funny the whole way through. There were just moments like, who are they singing to? I mean, you just can't help but laugh. Like they did such a great job with it. I'm just still kind of dumbfounded by like how much I really, really liked it.
Yeah.
And that's getting. Oh, sorry, Patty. Go ahead.
No, go.
So that and that gets back to what we talked about right at the beginning, where we're talking about sequels, and the purpose of this sequel was to serve just to serve the fans a heavy dosage of what they loved about the first movie most, and that was the witches. And they did it brilliantly, smoothly and brilliantly, without the clunkiness of the original one, which didn't know its place. It didn't really it didn't know how to balance itself. This one knew what to do, and it did it well.
I do think that Kathy Najimy and Sarah Jessica Parker are kind of underutilized in these films. Like they don't have a lot of words, though. I think Sarah Jessica Parker had like 90,000 times more like lines in the second one than she did in the first, because she's a much bigger actress. But I don't even know the names of anybody other than Winifred, because they don't say them enough, right? It's all Winifred. It'd be nice if the other two kind of had a bigger spot, I guess. So
Mary and Sarah.
Yeah, Kathy Najimy doing this though made me like really happy. Like her like motions were on point.
Speaking of Kathy Najimy, can we please talk about the Broomies?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was fantastic.
They have the mind of their own. Killed me, made me laugh so hard.
And she called them the girls.
Yeah. And when they came and finally, like, with the salt, I was like,
swept up the salt.
And it took 12 minutes for them to, like, get over there. Like, it was so... I was screaming. I thought it was the best. It was so funny.
I'm reliving it all again now. This is good. It was that was good. And a couple people now have mentioned the character of Billy. Again, came back. Beautiful, beautiful character. And I thought, good. He got his story. He got his backstory.
What's funny is initially I didn't love Billy in this movie. I actually paused the movie because he came out of the grave with what sounded like to me a very weird accent that I didn't remember him having in the first movie. So I was like kind of aggravated about it while I was watching, and it seemed to like come and go a little bit. And then I went back and I watched just his scenes at the end, and he doesn't talk enough for me to have formed this kind of opinion about it. So I don't know what I was upset about, but like I loved the bromance that he had going on when they were trying to get all the spell ingredients. Like that was really cute. But yeah, I feel I would like to apologize to Billy because I was really upset with him when he first came on, and it was for no good reason. I really did enjoy it.
There was a really good question that came up, and I saw somebody wrote is asking if people are going to get into, if kids are going to get into witchcraft because of this film, which I guess is part of the fear of some of the backlash from some sectors of the population. But the craft, I mean, the reality is the movie The Craft and some others have offered an avenue to explore metaphysical stuff or tarot or occult practices through movies, and that's a reality. I don't think that's a bad thing, obviously. So someone's asking, do we think that will happen with this movie? I
think it's much gentler than, say, The Craft or almost anything else. They didn't do very much magic, and like you said, they didn't really call themselves magic or witches. And the other two girls are very reluctant.
I think it's no different than Harry Potter getting your Hogwarts letter when you're 11 and getting your witch powers when you're 16. Like, I don't understand I've seen a lot of videos, like on TikTok, especially of people speaking out about this and like really being upset, and you know, the evil's coming through my TV screen so my kids won't watch it. Like, I don't understand that at all, because it's a kids movie and it's not. I don't see what in that could inspire that, but you know, I think it mainstreams it. It just does. It takes one more step to just mainstream it instead of living constantly in a 1692 Puritan society that puts their nose up at this and, you know, calls everybody out on it and, you know, get the red W on your forehead. Like, you know, it's just mainstream. Like that's what it does. So I think it's I hope they do. I hope all the kids get into crafts and witchcraft and spells and crystals and everything else. I'll help.
Well, help. We'll get there. You have responsibility. I mean, I could give you I'm not proselytizing in anything. And I just love that Paula wrote, witches or witches aren't bad. Share it with her daughter. Yeah, you're talking to 4 witches here who all don't think it's bad. And yeah, I could go into a whole speech here, but I'm not gonna.
It's not the first movie. It's not the first movie to do this. So I mean, I get everybody gets upset about it every single time, but it's not the first, and hopefully it's not going to be the last, because I think it's great and I enjoy it.
I do think it's different than The Craft, Heather, in that The Craft was like this first movie that really portrayed witches at all in any sort of positive light with actual practices that we might recognize as witchcraft. And right now we're sort of still in the giant witch bubble, right? So it's not a standalone thing. It's one of like several different pieces of movie and television out there with witches in it.
No, I'm not sure that I agree with that, because I think, and yes, it's not a standalone. It's not The Craft. It's not breaking through anything. It's actually very much in line with a host of other witch films and witch narratives, teen narratives specifically, that we've seen since about 2015. It's repeating a lot of what we've already seen, but it's really presenting. It's normalizing that metaphysical space for teen girls. They wear pendants. They don't talk about the moon pendant. It's just there. They grab the salt. They have the herbs. They're in the metaphysical store. They're talking about this is all just part of teen life for them. And that is normalized as good. So I think that I think in that way, it's normalizing a teen culture that's very popular right now. And I've seen it with my own teens, this is actually reflective of something that's occurring. So that, and it's good, and it's actually paired against or paralleled to bad, evil magic. And so you see, oh yes, I can do this. It's giving a path. So is it going to turn people to witchcraft? Probably not in a way that's like, you know, the crafted, like you said, it's not as special, but at the same time, it's giving a space saying, okay, this is what teens do, which saying, oh yeah, I did that. I got that. I know what that salt is. Hey, do you know what that salt, you know, that they kind of bond with those characters. They're connecting to those characters. And So I think there is a facet of it.
I mean, I'm sure that it will have some sort of impact. It's just not as singular, I think.
No.
Was. But I did love that they used like magic that we might do. Like if I was dealing with an entity in my house, I would run out and get the salt. That would be the first thing that we did. And they use it several times in the movie. And I thought that was terrific and great because to me that felt like a real practice that witches do.
Yeah.
And the circling counterclockwise widdershins during the banishing spell. I was like, oh, look at this. They're going in the right direction. But yeah, in that way, I think that there is this it might pique curiosity is my point. Not like the craft, but it might pique curiosity or validate children that are already doing this, or teens, I should say, not children. So it's not a bad thing.
No.
Well, I think it can be children too. Like they just came out with a toy. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's like a magic cauldron. And it actually, like, you do things to it. It bubbles and it foams and it puts smoke out and you do the magic spell and then it pops out a stuffed animal. And it was like $70 and I bought it for my son, for myself, and like played with it. But like it's literally a magic cauldron and you can keep doing it over and over again. And it's all the things. And I think I hope that means that this is becoming okay for kids to explore. It doesn't mean that you have to have 4-year-olds announcing to everyone that they're a witch, but like kids play pretend and like let them play pretend.
Right. And I wouldn't be upset if my 4-year-old proclaimed that they were a witch because again, it's a responsibility belief system. You're not a follower, you're not a sheep, it's a whole different thing. So if my 4-year-old wants to, and I would buy my kid a bubbling cauldron. This is completely off subject. Very cute. It is. It just reminded me, though. I just thought this was about the funniest thing ever, and I'm probably going way too far. I remember when the vibrating Harry Potter brooms came out.
Oh my God!
Really fast.
Yeah.
Vibrating Harry Potter brooms.
I do not remember these.
They did not last very long, and then they ended up in like pick and save kind of stores. Yeah. And then they became a thing.
Yeah. The scandal.
I don't remember that at all.
Yep. I had one. I don't know where it is. I wish I knew where it was. Yeah. It was funny.
Wow. Well, I think it's a fun addition to the witch movie canon, and I think they did a much better job with this one. I was very much pleased, surprisingly, I will say. So good job, Disney.
Yeah.
Well done. And now Hocus Pocus 3, as they suggested at the end of the movie. Because Disney.
It's Disney. And I apologize to everybody. Willow had to get the last 2 cents in before we end, and so I'm going to mute for a second. So I don't know what we want to talk about next week. We could talk about it now, or we could talk about it, over the cauldron later. You guys, we do want your thoughts and opinions. Which movies do you want? Do we want to look? We talked about like boy witches, good witches, bad witches. We've done some horror witches. So I'm going to mute while my dog bites. So before we even go there, why don't each of you introduce yourselves, where people can find you, and a thought that you might have that we want to talk about. Let's start with Courtney this time, as I mute.
Okay, so I'm Courtney. You can find me online at I'm at the Feems, TheFeems, on everything, Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, all that fun stuff. You can watch me on Scared and Alone, which is at www.scaredandalone.com, or at Scared Alone Live on any of the social medias. Or if you're traveling around Salem this month, you can hear I have no voice left because I have to go and sell tickets a lot. So if you're traveling around Salem, if you're coming to see the Hocus Pocus sites, and you recognize this face, that's where I'll be. So you can stop in and say hi. But it's been an absolute pleasure again to be on. And anytime you guys want to talk about witch movies, I would love, not a witch per se, but kind of witchy, is Hereditary. And if you guys ever talk about Hereditary, I have a lot of thoughts and I would love to participate.
Thank you. And Jason?
I'm Jason Mankey. I'm one of only 4 Jason Mankeys in the entire United States, so I'm very easy to find on the Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter. So I'd love to hang out with you and you can tell us what movies we should be watching going forward.
Beautiful. Heather.
Hi, and I am Heather Greene, and I am also on the socials. And the best way to find me, to find my social handles, is to go to heathergreene.net, and everything is listed there. I do most of my online communication on Twitter, so come to my Twitter account, tell me what movies you love, and let's chat movies. And I look forward to hearing from everybody. I can't stop talking movies, so talk to me about other movies too, what outside of witchcraft.
Thank you. Yes, we do want to know, so you guys know how to find all of us. We do on Facebook have a Witches Movie Coven Facebook page. So go there, talk, chatter. I am Patti Negri. You can find me at pattinegri.com. I am on all the social medias as well. And from there, you can get to the real me, Patti Negri Psychic Medium on Facebook, Patti.Negri on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, everything. So again, if you get there from my website, you'll get to the real me, because there's some artificial me's out there. Also, make sure you check out the Witching The Witching Hour drops every Monday in video, on my YouTube, on audio, in every place you look at podcasts, and also on paraflix.com. So like us, follow us, tell your friends about us if you like us. If you want to see something different, tell us about it, or something more, ideas. We really love your feedback. We love how much you guys really chimed in with great ideas and great thoughts and questions. So let's do it again next week, shall we?
Yes.
One more thing to do. One more thing to do.
Oh, it's cackle time.
I have no voice. I'm gonna do my
All right,
best.
you guys, everybody out there, we want you to do this too. Okay, we got to cackle because we're witches. 1, 2, 3. We are the Witches Movie Coven.